Y'all have time to? Well, good afternoon. It's 1:30. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'd like to recognize that we have this meeting on the unceded traditional territories of the Koopichesat and Kishet First Nations, and we're grateful for that fact. And those to attendees and delegates, this meeting is being recorded and is live streamed on YouTube on the Regional District website. Attendees can register to watch on Zoom. Questions can be emailed to the ACRD at responses@acrd.bc.ca. I would like to welcome everyone here today for the meeting. Because we're conducting our business in a hybrid format, we'll go on the table here first and enter those online. And I will start to my right here.
I'm reading where we're going. Reading where we're going instead of where we're at. Hi, I'm John McNabb, representative of the city population. Thank you.
Cindy Solda and City of Port Alberni City Council.
Ken McRae, member at large.
Arne Elias, Director, Port Authority.
Dan Law, Mayor of Tofino.
Jim McDonald, Director of Infrastructure Services at the City of Port Alberni.
Mike Erg, Special Projects Director with the Regional District.
And Daniel Saya, the CAO for the ACRD. Thank you so much.
Kristen Cardonahue, Administrative Assistant with the ACRD.
Thank you. No go online for Director Beckett.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mike, thank you for taking over for me. My name is Bob Beckett, and I represent Bamfield Area A.
Thank you. Marilyn? Hello, Marilyn. Can you hear me?
Sorry, somebody just knocked on the door, so my dog is going crazy. But hi, Marilyn McEwen, Mayor of Ucluelet.
Thank you. Jolene?
Jolene Dick, CEO, Alberta Valley Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you. Marcy?
Marcy DeWitt, Coordinator for the Alberni Clayoquot Health Network.
Thank you. Dean?
Dean Pochon with Tzawakon Forestry, TFL 44.
Thank you. Colin?
Colin Cosman, Mosaic Forest Management.
Thank you. And Michael?
Good afternoon, Mike Pearson, Director of Vancouver Island District with the Ministry of Transportation.
Thank you. And I am Mike Sparrow, and I will be your chair for the day, stepping in for Bob. Before us, we have an agenda. Is there any additions from the corporate side? None. Any additions from staff? Okay. No? Can I have approval of the agenda?
Move the agenda.
Thank you. And seconded by Cindy Solda. Thank you. Motion on the agenda. All in favor? Against? Approved. Thank you. Any declarations of conflict of interest? Okay. Seeing none, we have item 4, Transportation Advisory Committee meeting held on November 5th. Any errors or omissions? Okay. Move to adopt by Cindy Solda, seconded by Ken McRae. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. Petitions, delegations, presentations, I see none. Correspondence for action, I see none. Requests for decisions. Requests for decisions. ACRD secondary route, emergency route engagement strategy. I will take that away. Does that Mike Erg taking over now? I'll give it to him and then we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will just give a brief overview of the report and then hopefully have some discussion with the committee. And so this is a request for decision with some recommendations going to the ACRD board on 2 things: to approve the lobbying strategy that's presented in Appendix A, and to allocate staff resources to coordinate establishing an emergency route and work towards a viable secondary route that is open year-round. We would advance with consensus building and a lobbying plan, including preparation of a summary report, requesting meetings with core partners to build a unified vision within our region, and the inclusion of feedback and guidance from all of the partners would then be put into the into the report, as well as hiring a lobbying consultancy to help us work with the various ministries involved in the provincial government. The key messaging needs to highlight that the region currently relies on a single primary highway for access. This creates significant vulnerabilities during emergencies, natural disasters, or prolonged closures, which impacts public safety, economic stability, and our community resilience. On November 4th, this committee initially looked at proceeding with a coordinated effort, and then this following up on that meeting, we want to identify some key priorities for 2026 and have a discussion with the committee. This includes drafting the summary review that identifies the top choices for the emergency route that could also be upgraded in phases to become a permanent alternative route into and out of the Alberni Valley. Present the report to all partners across the region, and then in accordance with their preferred approach. For example, letters or going as delegations to councils and boards, etc. And then to have a shared letter of support that all the partners agree upon for advancing with a single preferred route. And then finally to hire a lobbying firm to coordinate these efforts as well. And I think one of the things we wanted to talk about today, so the core messaging should focus on safety and resilience, which has redundant access, is essential to this emergency route. The economic imperative, Highway 4 disruptions, cost millions of dollars per event, and new economic opportunities exist working with First Nations and moving forward their economic visions. Co-development of this strategy with partners and consistent community messaging is really important, and that working with First Nations through reconciliation as well. And then, the other part is readiness. The emergency detour route activation really needs to happen within hours. And then Appendix A of this report sets out the lobbying strategy and really want to have some discussions with the committee if there are any, they agree with the strategy. Any recommendations for changes or additions that need to be made, have we included all the partners in this way? And so I will stop there, and certainly, Daniel, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add, or we can go to any questions and input from the committee.
Okay, we're going to go to questions. Are there any questions so far? No input? Arnie, go ahead.
Yeah, we had a little bit of discussion on climate change, and for me, that's part of the background, because really what we're looking at is increasing fires, floods, road washouts, bridge washouts, avalanches, etc., etc., etc. And that then also drives the core messaging as well, because we're saying, well, what's changed in 100 years? Well, something has. We're getting a lot more of these things. 100-year floods are happening every 5 years. So I think that needs to be built in. I don't think I need to go on. I think you understand exactly what I'm talking about.
Look at that. Councilor Sola?
I would concur with that because I had a text from someone who in the Alberni Valley who is quite concerned because what if Bamfield is totally closed off again, as well as Highway 4? And so then what do we all do, right? And there has to be something. I mean, weather is obviously a big factor, and tomorrow we have Highway 4 closed again, and I understand that. I mean, the wind and everything else, and if you drive through there, which you do, Daniel, you see a lot of branches and trees and stuff like that. So what do we do? And definitely climate change should be in there. And have we, maybe our friends on screen can actually tell us, what do we do if that happens, if we have to close both? I actually expected Bamfield to be closed at some point too, because of what the weather was in the last couple of days as well. Now we have Highway 4. I'll leave it like that.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thanks for that, Cindy. I think smaller communities, remote communities, and First Nations are more impacted. So I think that is also part of the messaging.
Thank you. I actually have a question to Mike Pearson. being MOT and also Colin. We had a lot of rain this last little while. I remember last year, as a part of the road to Bamfield was submerged and we lost 2 people in pickup trucks. Has that road been underwater this year with this rain, or has it still passable right now? Anyone want to take that?
Yeah, I think that's a question for TFLP or Mosaic. I'm not aware of that. We've just been focused on the Mount Underwood section, which hasn't seen any issues yet, except for a small slough yesterday.
Okay, thank you. So Dean, can you answer that one? How's the road at Bamfield? Is it underwater or how's it holding up?
As far as I know, I haven't heard any reports of it being underwater per se. Of course, there's been trees down over the lines, which have been cleared up, and your typical industrial road type issues when we have a significant rainfall event, which also get dealt with as they arise.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, John.
So on this approach that we're talking about, not the approach as a road, but the approach as an effort, I'm kind of concerned that we don't have the footing with First Nations at this point, that the engagement hasn't been significant enough. So I don't know what to do about that, but it's a key component that we need to be just all going in the same direction.
I can take that one. Mike will have it in 6 months, but I think for the time being, I think the discussions that we have had so far, like we've done quite a bit of work with Huu-ay-aht, with Dididat, and with Tushot. And so along those lines, I think we have a strong foundation in terms of the discussion, and Huu-pa-chesed I'd throw into that mix. What we haven't had a lot of discussion in and around is with the West, they're all West Coast, but the sort of the Coquet, Hauset, Hesquiet, and of course there's some of the other treaty nations that are already part of the board, so they're aware, but we haven't had that formal engagement. And I think what we are proposing is shifting from the discussions that we've had here at the committee level and discussions that we'd had around the Mount Underwood fire with nations that were directly impacted, to now shift and take the appropriate time to summarize that and have the discussions with the nations. I would say that we weren't really ready to have those discussions with other nations until we had a better understanding of the report and the review that the province had done. And now that we have that, once we received that, I believe was in October, by the time we received it, now it's really talking about how do we move forward. And in the estimation of time, what we wanted to make sure that we're doing is that when we said 10 hours per government, in terms of a rough estimate, it's assuming that with some of those nations, it might not take that amount of time to get to a certain decision point where there's support, but with others it might take more because, as you identified, they're coming at it a little more fresh than others that have been part of the discussion for a long time. So, you know, we do our best with that. It's also challenging to try and bring that amount of people down the journey that we've been down for the full period of time. So there are some nations that are impacted that frankly prefer being brought up to speed after the fact, right? And so it's not that they're not fully aware, but do they need to be fully engaged throughout the full process is something that is a fair question that so far those that have identified that they want to be part of the discussion have identified and have been part of that discussion. Yeah, I don't know if that clearly answers it, but it's yeah. I mean, we've taken the approach that we've had so far. I can't make it better or worse. It is what it is.
You know, I'm just worried that the nations aren't going to feel that they've been a meaningful part of the decisions and the direction. I'm not an expert on that, but I know that, the conversations that we've even had in these meetings have indicated that they don't feel like they're being properly communicated with. So it's a piece of it that needs to be right and considerate and meaningful and productive. So, it's almost a study by itself.
Through the chair, I completely agree. And I think the best we can do is in this plan is identify how we would progress down the path of that engagement and discussion. And I think as the report identifies, we have rough estimates, but those estimates would change based on the direction and feedback we receive from the nations. If we need additional information, the question is how quickly can we get it, or does it already exist? What level of input can be brought in at that point, right? So, and the same would hold true when we talk about the discussions that we've had with neighboring regional districts. Like we have engaged with Cowichan, the Cowichan Regional District, albeit at a very high level and conceptually, just like we've given notice to the regional district in Nanaimo and the Comox Valley. So at my level, I have had discussions with my peers. So at a high level, they're aware of the discussions we're having. However, we haven't formally engaged in any meaningful way. And so it could very well be that we need to pump the brakes and take some time for that as well. That said, also time is of the essence in trying to mobilize and get a unified presence in front of at least the province, if not also the federal government.
Councillor Solda.
Yeah, so when I look at the recommendations and that, I just get really frustrated because, as long as I've been on council, and that's for many years, we've been lobbying government. We've been doing reports. We've been saying, here's what we would like to do. They've had Jordan Sturdy was part of the transportation for the government, and studies and studies and studies. So it's getting really frustrating. And I know we're sitting at this table going, this is what we want to do. We should lobby and everything. But we know the provincial and federal government have announced no money. So I'm kind of curious to know, like, Michael, I don't know if this is in your department. So if there's no money, are we just going in circles again for the next time there's an election? Where are we with this? Because the government's cutting back on everything. And what's it going to do for us? I just find a lot of frustration, and some of us have been through this for many years, and and you hear that in social media, not just social media, but just from local people who have gone through this too. So I'll shut up and let you speak.
Yeah, thanks. I can appreciate that's kind of hard for me to answer. It's obviously very political. But I think knowing the message that, government we're in economic times right now, that if it was a huge ask to make this a secondary route into like a full standard highway, it's probably going to be a tough lobbying effort. But I think I think there may be more success if the ask is reasonable to establish the route, and not necessarily upgrading it fully or anything like that. I think that's probably the better way to approach this. If we want a brand new highway that's going to be fully met to every standard, I think that's going to be a very large price tag and not likely to go anywhere. But something more reasonable might be better received. But again, that's the best I can offer on that. It is obviously political.
So that was a very political answer, by the way, just so you know that. I know that game.
I'm not good at that.
We all are. So the other thing too is, the route, if we're just going to just put a gravel or whatever we put down, I'm not technical, and there's a lot of vehicles that can't travel on that route, that emergency route that was established. I mean, there's new cars coming in on trailers, they get damaged, although they are there's shrink wrap, but there's a lot of damage on vehicles on top of that. So, I mean, would not like the government look at, you know, is it going to cost more going to ICBC or getting the road done properly if we're going to do something like that? You've got to look at that way too. I mean, deaths, you know, if you're doing gravel, people come off the road, that can happen. I mean, that's worst case scenario, and I never would like to see that happen. But I'm trying to look at the future where how do we mitigate some of the issues that have happened in the past if this is where we're going forward, right? I mean, politically, people are great at lobbying, probably not good enough because we haven't got it established yet. Anyways, just a thought.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I'd say is, you know, the only example I can draw from is was about 20 years ago now that the province picked up the Pacific Marine Circle route, and that's the first time, at least in my career, that that a new road of that length has been taken on by the province, and we've essentially purchased it from the forest companies, and it was sort of as is where is with a little investment, but not a huge amount, and it remained gravel for a few years until if anyone remembers the Highway 18 thing with seal coat, but yeah, that's kind of how it got established in the first place. So it's kind of the only comparable I could draw from. I don't know if that's helpful.
Think of it. I've been on that road. That's a nice road back there. Not the one on the coastal one going across the little logging road. It's nice and wide and flat. It's a pretty good road. I have Mayor Law.
Yeah, just to comment on lobbying, government relations lobbying, and you know, one of the things I know as a politician who tries to get a lot of stuff done in a short period of time, that criticisms are endless, but positive recognition and appreciation is rare, but it's very effective. And I know that we talk about highways, and criticism of highways is even more endless than endless. And one of the things I've learned from sitting in this meeting and thinking about Highway 4 and thinking about the alternative route is that in the past 25, 30 years, how much the Ministry of Transportation and Transit now has done for the region of the coast, the hundreds of millions of dollars that have been put into Highway 4, you know, even the studies and the upkeep of this secondary route, which we already have through Couch, and you know, we've seen that work, you know, to some degree. And you know, and coming off of the 4 years of Hydro Hill, and how much the Ministry of Transportation has actually changed and listened to communities. And I got to say, the last 4 major projects on Highway 4 have been almost seamless, and how the communications increased. And that is an answer. So I just want to make a point of saying that, you know, we're going to lobby. Hopefully we'll go through with this if the committee wants and the communities are on board, but to not forget the power of a positive lobbying effort, and to recognize the work that's already been done. And I just want to point that out, that's going to be an important aspect going forward, because the ask is tremendous, and it will, you know, it will follow well on a good recognition of what's already been done.
Okay, thank you for that. I have Director Beckett.
Thank you. I've only been on, this is my second term as a director, and, you know, listening and hearing from previous directors and existing directors who have been around this board table for an awful long time. And I'm sensing and hearing some frustration with respect to, you know, here we go again. But at the end of the day, from my perspective, this committee needs to identify the route or routes that we want to move forward with. And, you know, again, we can we can talk about the process until the cows come home. But, you know, I think at the end of the day, we need to establish what that emergency route is, or what that alternate route is going to be. Because without that, we're still going to be spinning our wheels.
Okay, thank you. Good point. Anybody else have any questions? Both ends. We'll start out the far end here.
I just want to follow up on that. It's a great comment because I know there has been conversation around the room, and I do not think there's consensus on the committee yet. At least I feel like there's probably a couple committee members who would disagree, or perhaps object to the route that the Ministry of Transportation has presented as the optimal route. And I do agree that with Mr. Beckett, that if we go to the lobby effort, if we go out to the communities and we have internal conflict or dissent, that is going to come through. And so I do think that that's a good idea, that we should find consensus at this committee, preferably today, and then go out and go from there, if possible. I mean, that's just a comment. I agree with Mr. Beckett.
Thank you. No, John, like that.
Yeah. It's the problem we're facing is there's really kind of a divisionary need in two different areas that we can't solve with a consensus. I mean, the Didadat situation and that road and its effectiveness for Bamfield area and for Cowichan. We can't overcome that, and as a citizen of Port Alberni or Alberni Valley, the Horn Lake Connector system is so much easier to swallow than the other one. So I'm not quite sure that we're going to be able to reach consensus on that. I mean, it's going to come down to a point where the communities become part of the discussion, the First Nation communities and the non-First Nation communities, and that through this process we're going down the road with, we actually, at the end of time, come up with the logical decision. And so, the logical decision may be an upgrade to the Didadat Cowichan Trail and some other access that meets the need of the West Coast and Alberni Valley. So I'm thinking that I would like to move the recommendation, and the reason for that, it's minimally kind of touches on the things that I see as important, and I don't know how much better than that we're actually going to do. So is it appropriate that I move the recommendation? Do you want it read out, or are you happy with it looking at it on a piece of paper?
It can be read out, but I have it right here. I was going through trying to find it. So if you said, what is a motion? I can read it out if you want, unless you want to read it out.
Okay, I'll read it out. I would move that the Transportation Advisory Committee recommend to the ACRD Board of Directors, 1, approve the lobbying strategy and direct staff to implement immediate next steps as identified in the December 16, 2025 report, to allocate the identified staff time in the 2026 budget to create a vision consensus towards achieving a coordinated regional lobbying effort to request the province of British Columbia to establish an emergency access route as an immediate priority, and B, to continue a phased approach for a viable secondary access road highway that is open year round.
You think seconder? Seconder? Okay. Councillor Soltis seconded it. Discussion. Hard? Go ahead.
Well, I think this is a two-step dance, and and I think they're connected in a funny way. So the emergency route is something I think we need to get onto and determine where it goes and how it works. But it is connected to the largest strategic opportunity, which is basically a more permanent route, and also to let some of the initiatives for First Nations and remote communities, so they have input, they feel a sense of leadership, as to John's point, so that they feel part of this. I think that's critical. And I think there's a larger strategic element here as to what is the future of this region 10, 20, 30, 50 years from now. Is there going to be an interior highway? So there is a connection to that piece, and I think I'd like people to sort of be aware, if you're not already, but most of you are, be aware of that strategic second step, which is whatever we choose now has implications for what goes down in the future.
Thanks for that. Councilor Solda.
Just to add on that, when we talk about the future too, does the ministry also take a look at the consensus reports, which will be out next year? And because a lot of the conferences that I have attended have said that, and they state that the island is going to be overloaded, like it's going to explode in population. And are we going to be looking at that for future? Because there'll be more issues regarding highways and everything if we are not looking at it. So we need to look at it even further down the road. So I'm just kind of curious to know if that's taken into account.
Sure, go ahead. All right.
So I've mostly worked at the federal level, and I've probably the last quarter century, I've brought in about $10 billion, either led or brought in that much money. And it's all about the business case. It's about making it strategic business case. And it's a long journey. Some of these things take 8, 9, 10 years to do. But referring against the mayor's point here, I mean, I do think we need to have a positive attitude that if we have the right business case, as what you're just saying about the future of the island, where we're going, and the population pressures and the economic generation, I think that's also something to be considered.
So,
just a couple of comments. So as far as industry is concerned, we don't have much forest industry left. What we have is pretty vital. We have Domtar in this community. When they were shut down last time, it just about did them in. You hear about Crofton, it would have been Port Alberni. And if it happens again, they're probably going to be out of here. We're trying to get more industry on the waterfront too. I sit on the Port Authority. Also, lots of the industries on the Port Authority, they bring fish in. The most of the fish they get comes in, probably 80% of it, and everything else, and it goes out the next day or a couple of days later. Some of them really suffered when we had the road shut down. It did one of them in, and so we can't have that happen again. We have to make a decision what we're going to do. I've been involved in this when we started the ring routes for 20 bloody years. We never got in. We never got anywhere. The only time we ever hear about the highway is when someone gets killed. That's about the only time. Ever since I was a kid going on that road, since the 40s, that's the only time you ever heard about it. We don't want that to happen again. We want to have an outlet so we can get people out of here, especially the condition that our hospital is in today. We have to have a route out of here, another route for the whole West Coast of the island. We have to make a decision.
Thank you. Daniel?
I think it's all connected, and I what is identified if you pass the motion that's there is a plan to flesh all that out, right? So the summary report that we're referring to would take everything we currently know, summarize it, and put it together, and identify what we think at a staff level are the top considerations and the top choices. What are the top options that we should look at as alternative routes, so we can have that discussion? And the intention of the outreach that then would follow out of that is to verify that with those nations and governments, so that they have their input to say, yeah, you know what, that makes sense, or no, you've missed this or that. But by our account, and I'll reference what Michael Pearson has said, is that there's a logic to making sure that whatever route we choose is a route of both an emergency route and the planned long-term highway route, because then you're compounding the value of every investment, whether it's forced by an actual emergency, which we're seeing one at least every 2 years now, or whether it's a pre-planned investment. But you know, like we want to make sure that we're maximizing the value of that, and we also have to make sure that any potential interested parties have a voice. Now, it's my understanding that when we look at, you know, going through the Horn Lake Connector, that you're perhaps entering some with the nations some more unsettled issues, right? So the Comox Nation, in their statement of claim recently for treaty, comes right into the Beaufort area in the ACRD, and I think that came as a surprise to Shot and Hubachesset, and so there's some dialogue there to occur, and there's still some long-lasting. My understanding is there's still some long-lasting unsettled issues between Qualicum Nation and where the line is with Shot as well, and so my concern in some of those areas is that we need to check in and say, hey, like if we were to lobby the province for a route, what other issues should we be aware of? You know, because what the province is likely going to look for is what's the easy win. And the more work we do together to make sure that we've thought this out and that we have a well-supported unanimous voice, is that we make it easy for them to take the next step. And whether that next step is like what Michael said, is just to buy the right of way, then that's the next step. But it has to build on itself. And correctly, you've identified that there's still a lot for us to do in here. We've had a lot of good discussion, but we've also been the only ones having that discussion. So when we move that out, we need to make sure that we're collecting that extra information. And by the time we get to a lobbying effort, that we've thought out of all these pieces so that it becomes easier for the province to say yes. And I think it starts with that summary report, and it requires that we continue checking in here at a committee level, because it is good feedback and a good exchange of both the things that we tried in the past, like Cindy's saying, hey, the 20 years that we're trying to do this, yeah, let's not forget that. And let's try and change that reality by looking into the future, and making sure that it is a sound investment for the province to make above others. And yeah, we don't have all the answers yet, but I think the plan in this resolution is the right step forward.
Okay, thank you for that. I was reading the motion here, and the way it almost reads almost sounds like we're asking the province to establish emergency route access, the way it reads. So is that the one that Michael's going to tell us the preferred route? We're going to say that sounds good to us, or we're going to tell him the preferred route? He's going to tell us that sounds good to him.
Well, it's worded such that it's clear where our audience is going to be the province. Once we get our vision articulated, we're going to start with the province. We know from our discussion with Digidot Nation that audience might expand, or will likely, if we're going in that direction, expand to the federal government as well. Because if they proceed with treaty, then there's some agreements there that will those cards will be played. We don't know if that's the case. I mean, like I said, Comox is also looking at treaty, but I don't know where they're at, and so. There's a lot there for us to look at, but it's worded such that we are moving towards lobbying first the province, and that lobbying can only occur once we have a unanimous voice, because it doesn't take a lot to have visions fall apart, and getting to a unanimous voice is likely the hardest bit.
Thank you. Do you want that unanimous voice on a route here today? Is that the idea, or the intention, to try and go forward as a guide?
I would, as much as I'd love that, because then it's like, hey, here's the route. I think that we'd be well served to if we move forward with this resolution, we would draft a report that would identify those potential routes. And at that point, it might be good to identify the preferred route at a committee level. But in the absence of a summary report, I would I have an opinion. I'm not sure if everyone would agree, and I don't think it's about selling my opinion. I think it's making sure we're building consensus on all the right facts. So I would say wait for the report in January and then go from there. But the committee's welcome to do different.
Yeah, we can override. I have Jolene and then I have
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to speak in support of the motion. I do think it's the strategic step forward. I do think, as an Indigenous woman, with my Indigenous woman hat on, I do think it's always important to hear everyone's considerations to respect to Indigenous governments' sovereignty. But I don't want to devalue those comments, but I do believe that this is a unifying this is a unifying project. This is a unifying thing that we can all kind of get on board for. I don't think there's anyone that would be opposed to an alternative route or to the establishment of the route. I think everyone wants the shortest one, or they want it to go through their backyard so they can access. I think that's kind of the framework we're working on, rather than the not in my backyard. Maybe Horn Lake, obviously that one is like the most attractive from the resident stand point of view. I know that Councillor Solda and John McNabb have been around this table for a long time, and that one has been a conversation for a long time. Same with Ken McCrae. But I just wanted to say, from the chamber point of view, we kind of just need to get on with getting a coordinated approach. And I think some language that definitely needs to be included is that we're looking for an industrial standard route that can unlock the economic activities in the region. So obviously an industrial standard route would achieve the emergency goals that we're looking to have. It's one of those needs versus wants and how much will it cost situation. So I look forward to supporting staff to develop this review and report for our consideration in 2026 so we can keep moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Very a lot.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And I just want to retract my my initial, desire or request to see this committee decide today. I think it's a little impatient of me, but that's aspirational. But Mr. Sayan has persuaded me. I'm confident that if we support this motion, that staff can bring back appropriate information. And I actually, I just want to say that the comment on the industrial standard is extremely important. And I like that a lot. And I would like to see that as a key component of the route chosen, because that at the end of the day makes or breaks it for most of the communities, is whether you can get an industrial grade piece of equipment in.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to ask Michael Pearson right now. The one to Banfield, is that considered industrial grade, the chip seal part?
It does. It's a. Sorry, how do you mean? What do you mean by that? It's the road now it's an industrial road in certain terms of its primary functions, for commercial vehicles like logging trucks. In that standard, yeah. Is that what you're asking me?
Yes, so maybe I get Mike Herc, you might be able to answer that a bit better.
And I think what Jolene was referring to was commercial transport trucks that operate on the highway can operate on whatever the route is, the road we come up with. So it's certainly the existing route, the way it is right now, is industrial in that it is used by logging trucks but a lot of it is still off-road, as opposed to, we want to make sure that whatever emergency route and then progressing forward is capable of accommodating commercial transport that operates on highways. So that's going to relate to widths and grades as well.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I see Arn, and then I see Jolene's her hand up still, and then I see Director Beckett. Okay, so we'll start that over.
So yeah, so I'm glad, thanks for clarifying that. I was gonna ask the same question. Yeah, I mean, from the Port Authority's perspective, obviously we want to have the ability to have freight, but it's not just us, the whole community needs freight capacity. So that's that's a big piece. The other point I wanted to go back to way back, which I thought was missing in the initial report, is where are people coming from and where are people going? I don't think we have enough data on that. I think that will, in fact, could move the needle on some of the decision making. Because, you know, if we have traffic counts and data on where the optimal, that'll tell you where the maximum volumes are going to be required.
Thanks for that. Julie?
Thanks everyone for having my back on what I meant by industrial standard. That's what I meant. And I also just, I'm not too sure when and where and how, but in case I happen to be absent for a future meeting, I do think we should also incorporate the feedback and little breadcrumb that Michael Pearson left for us about the precedent of the Pacific Marine Circle route on how that was, you know, a forestry industry road acquired from private companies. So that's kind of like one precedent for a different tourism route. And I do think that that adds strength to what we're trying to achieve, especially with the Huu-ay-aht First Nations embarking on tourism development. And I'm sure that that would also unlock the economic potential for the DT-Dot and other First Nations in the region along there. So I just want to get that feedback incorporated in case I'm absent in the future.
What do you think of that? I have Director Beckett and then Mayor Hewitt.
Thank you. I just have a, you know, I'm going to share my comments or my perspective, and then I do have one question. Great discussion today. I think that I agree with Daniel that the establishment of an emergency route that should be what will end up being the alternate route or secondary route out. I think that just makes economic sense. So when we're looking at that, that should be factored in. The industrial standard, unless I missed it, and I'm glad, Jolene, you brought that up, and we've had some discussion. I'm turning to Michael Pearson now. What would we call that? What is the standard that the Ministry of Transportation would say, so that we're all singing off the same song sheet with respect to, you know, whatever that route is that we have, you know, the best consensus that we can get, because I'm sure it's not going to be 100%, but, you know, when we talk about consensus of that road, what is the standard, Michael, that will bring that, you know, those industrial vehicles, school buses, you know, ambulances, fuel trucks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
So I guess there's two components to it, and there's the bridges themselves, and it being already industrial. And when I say bridges, I'm really thinking about the weight loading on them. Mm-hmm. So for forestry, they're already exceed, in most cases, what our full highway capacity loads are. So that's one piece. The only thing with those bridges is then they don't have like the same standard railings and that sort of thing. But those are things that we can deal with over time. If you've been on the Pacific Marine Circle route, we still have some forestry bridges on that route, but so there's that piece. And then in terms of the standard itself, we're often we start with volumes. So we have traffic volumes for the Banfield Road. Those are in the order of 250 vehicles per day. That gets a little bit more in the summertime, up to about 500. So that would fall into our low volume road standard, and that's the terminology, low volume road. It is our sort of lowest standard of road, but it's intended to carry all those types of traffic that you mentioned. So a consistent width on the top, consistent ditching, the safety elements like roadside barrier and signing and all that stuff, that's common to all road standards. So that's not really at play. It's just when we talk about the road standard, it's mostly the surfacing and the width, and then the alignment itself. But in short, the answer is a low volume road standard.
Thank you. And if I can, Chair, I'd like to ask Michael another question. So let's assume that the committee, through consultation with everyone, can come up with a recommendation for an emergency route, which could ultimately become the secondary route out of the valley. But let's focus on the emergency route. We come up with a preferred emergency route, and we go and start to lobby the province. Does that emergency route, let's say the province agrees that that's the route in question, does the Ministry of Transportation then take over responsibility for that route, given the fact that there may be still, you know, a myriad of owners of that route? How does that work? Because I can see it being problematic if it's not Ministry of Transportation.
Yeah, so it can happen three different ways, I think. The way it currently is, where it's an emergency route, but we just work collaboratively with the owners and the partners, which is what we've done in the last two major events. The second is it can become a public road by Forest Service Road. And that's something that's been discussed with the DDAT through their treaty. And so the road, if it was a public road, but Forest Service Road, it would still be under provincial jurisdiction under Ministry of Forests. So that's completely acceptable. And then the third would be obviously under highways. So those are the kind of the three options.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I will be supporting this motion. It's absolutely critical that we can get on with establishing an emergency route so that we can evolve, because I do believe that, you know, when we're talking provincial assistance, whether it's this government or another government, you know, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to be asphalt initially, but you know, this putting, you know, lipstick on I won't even go there because I'm not sure it's politically correct, but you know, saying that the Cowichan Road is now our emergency access route in the condition it's in is not acceptable, and we need to move whatever route we decide on. We need to start to make those improvements so that yes, it can go from, you know, proper grading and drainage to chip sealing to pavement over whatever period of time. So thank you for allowing me to share my perspective and thoughts.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm now Mayor McEwen.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to harken back to our November 5th meeting for a moment. There was quite an interesting document that Mike's department put out regarding route evaluation. There were 10 possible routes that were evaluated based on length, travel time, whether they were public or private roads, surface type, width, and vehicle suitability. And if I'm not mistaken, the end result of that evaluation was that the Ubu-Cowichan Lake detour was the best option of all those choices. Is that right, Michael?
That's correct. And the only nuance to that is whether it was North Shore Road to Yubo or South Shore to Missachi Lake.
Right, those were two viable options. So I'm just wondering, are we dismissing this whole route evaluation, or are we asking for a second evaluation? And this isn't toward Mike, this is toward the committee. It was a pretty comprehensive route evaluation, so I just don't understand why we're looking at other options now. If somebody could explain that to me.
I'll take a kick at that one. We certainly do not and will not dismiss the work that was already done by the ministry. So that's not the intent of this. The intent of this is for us to also take the report that was done. I think Ken had flagged with the Horn Lake connector that was done, and make sure that the key considerations and factors that were flagged then are also brought into light, and then to use that to reach out to those governments, some of which are around this table, some have been part of this conversation yet, and make sure that we're sharing that and that we're not missing anything. So And so if there is new information that we haven't considered, if there's an angle that should be flagged, that it is considered prior to finalizing what our decision might be on a preferred route. So it really is just to take everything that's been done so far, summarize it. We're not going to write a 300-page document here. What we're looking to do is an executive summary that keeps the salient points up to the top. And then we use that to engage, District of Tofino, but also Tlaoquiet, Ahousaht, Hesquiat, go back or go to Dididat in a formal way, and Huayet and Hochakwasit and Kulusat. So, like each one of those, to make sure that we're not missing something. And like the example I brought up, heading down the Horn Lake Connector, is an example that's just based on my knowledge, but I don't want to fill those blanks for somebody else. I think it would be interesting to hear from a Tayshat or from a Qualicum Nation, if that's the case, what challenges they would see with a route going that way, and is it in line with what we know, or is it new information, and how is that then synthesized? So don't want to reinvent the wheel. We just want to complement it and make sure we haven't missed anything. That way, I think once we've covered our bases, it's a lot easier to get to a solid consensus moving forward.
Okay, thank you for that. I know, okay, you're a lot.
Just want to follow up on this, not to belabor the point, but I think Mayor McEwen has a really good point, and I think I'm reading into the point is that we have a very comprehensive, up-to-date, more comprehensive, and of course, right up-to-date assessment of the routes. And when was the Horn? Maybe just a question here. When was the Horn Lake Connector assessment done? It was quite a few years ago that we're talking about. 2016. So, okay, 9 years ago. So I just want to make sure that we're not, as we discussed the latest one quite at length, and it's a great report. And I haven't actually discussed the Horn Lake one, or I'm not even sure if I've fully read it. And so just to reiterate that, to put them out as if they're the same quality or they have the same content is a little problematic. From my point of view, so that would be a caution, and maybe we're getting a little out of orbit on the question at hand, but it's just a comment on that.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Michael Pearson. I do believe that the most recent report that was just released does consider the work that was done in 2016. So there again, I really don't feel like the work that I'm talking about, us summarizing, is creating new information. It's just revisiting. We might identify a couple of other considerations that are non-engineering, non-technical. But I think the work the ministry has done most recently is an accurate summary of all routes. But correct me if I'm wrong, Michael.
No, you're correct. The report we just did, in terms of the Horn Lake itself, we literally were just taking the same information from the 2016 report and just updating that to reflect today's conditions. So built upon previous work.
So just a comment. So when they first put the inland highway in, the connector to Port Alberni was through Horn Lake. The MLA at the time took me on his motorbike to show me where the connector was going to be. So all the study had been done when they did the inland highway, where the connector was coming into Port Alberni. But a lot of other issues, they ran out of money. So they decided not to do it. So there must be a study there somewhere when they put the inland highway in, why they wanted to put the connector to Port Alberni from Horn Lake into Cherry Creek. That's where it was going to come out around Lost Lake into there. So there must be a lot of information somewhere on that. So anyway, that's just my point.
Okay, thank you for that. John McNabb, right?
So my reasoning for moving this motion is because we're going to get to a point where we have the answers to the questions and the road pathway to go, and a consensus of all of the decision makers, both First Nation and non-First Nation, that we go down that road. I mean, as far as trying to build a consensus on one route or the other at this meeting, I would wager that these three people here in a 1 week period could get 10,000 local Port Alberni Valley people to say that they want the Horn Lake route. That's not what we're about here. We're about trying to make a valued decision on a pathway to go forward. So we have a motion that's on the floor that we need to vote on, and we need to move forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Slow.
Just a quick thing. Population has changed in all areas, and there's people that have moved in, people who have moved out. Yes, there's people that have been here forever, but there's a lot of new people who have no idea what we're talking about. So times have changed. Let's just move forward and let's get this done. And technology has changed, so there's different ways of doing things than what it was 20 years ago or 10 years ago. So I'm good with this. And Jolene, I just want to say I liked what you said. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I don't think our decision today is to make a route decision, but there was a group of, there's 4 different groups that Mike put forward, like 1, 2, 3, and 4, obviously. And I think his preferred choice was the group 1 aspects, A through D, about the going through the Horn, not through Horn, like through Cowichan that way. So is the intent today that we leave it as that, and then you'll go and you'll ask all the other interested parties to get their feel of it, and then come back before we pick a route, because otherwise we're actually asking for, yeah, exactly. So put the motion as forward, then we'll go with all other interest parties, and then we'll come back with a consensus of what they think would be best route, and we have a better understanding of what the route is. That makes sense to everybody? Any more questions or answers? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor? All those opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. Now then, what else do we have on the agenda? Or do we have anything else? That was it, I think. Is it not? We have late business. We have none. Is that correct? Question period? We're, go ahead.
Sorry, there is one more thing on the agenda. We need to discuss 2026 meeting dates. We don't have any set, just because this one's a little bit more fluid than other committees. We're always waiting on reports and things for next meeting. So discuss when the next meeting should be, and we'll get it set.
Okay, I guess I'll go over to Mike and Daniel, what they think would be a good.
I will. I think given the, I think I would recommend a meeting in February. That we will have had a chance to put some reports together and reach out to other communities, and then come back and get that one discussed a route. So I would think in February.
Early or late? Early?
Let's go mid-February. It's also budget season, so or budget time for the regional district. So we'll need to fit that in out mid-February sometime.
All right, that sound good, everybody? Mid-February-ish, maybe? Sand, as good as sand? Okay, great. Thank you. Anything else we need to discuss? Sure.
I just want to say to the people who are responsible for the roads, the highways and stuff like that. I mean, yes, you're absolutely right. We don't say thank you enough. And I just want to say thanks. You know, like when the storm came through, I went through the highways. There was a lot of workers and people from DOT and different departments on the roads fixing things. And yeah, thank you. And the best thing is also our roundabout, just so Michael, you know, that I've had a lot of compliments about what's happening there. I just throwing that in. I just want to get it out there because Michael, I'm always on your case, and I just want to say thank you to all those that are responsible on behalf of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Greatly appreciate that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anybody else have any more comments? Oh, go ahead. Sure.
I just want to make a comment, Michael, that every time we have a transportation committee meeting, we're on the verge of closing the highway for maintenance. So maybe if we reduce the amount of meetings. Sorry, I just after all the love, I had to do a poke. But anyway, I just just want
Bye.
to share the appreciation. I certainly will echo that from our perspective as well. Michael, you and Nikki have been a tremendous partner in 2025 and really appreciate all that you've done. Thank you.
Thank you. Wouldn't feel right if I didn't get poked too, so that's good.
Okay, thank you. Oh, we have one more.
Motion to adjourn.
I was getting to that. Okay. Motion to adjourn. All those in favor? And carried. That's it. Thank you for your time.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Thank you.